You've been waiting for them to come back, waiting for the text, the apology, the moment they wake up and realize what they lost. But let me tell you something, that moment is not coming. And you don't need it to. Because today is the day you stop chasing. Today is the day you take your power back. Your avoidant ex didn't just lose you. They lost someone rare, someone valuable, someone irreplaceable. But the bigger question is, why are you still thinking about them when they were never thinking about you the way you deserved? When you were with your avoidant ex, you probably felt like you were always trying to close a gap that never seemed to shrink. No matter how much love, patience, and reassurance you gave, there was always this invisible wall between you. You sensed their hesitation, their distance, the way they pulled away just when things started to feel real. And at times, you might have even blamed yourself, thinking that if you had done something differently, been less emotional, less demanding, less expressive of your needs, they would have stayed. But the truth is, this had nothing to do with you and everything to do with them. People with avoidant tendencies have a deep-rooted fear of emotional closeness. They may want love, they may crave connection, but the moment they start to feel it, their subconscious mind perceives it as a threat. To them, intimacy feels like losing control, like surrendering their independence, like a weight pressing down on them. It's not that they didn't care about you, but their survival instinct told them to protect themselves from the vulnerability that love requires. So they ran. They may have done it suddenly, pulling away overnight without explanation, or they may have done it gradually, giving you mixed signals, making you question where you stood, making you doubt the very foundation of the relationship. And that's the cruel part, because you were offering love in its purest form while they were fighting their own battle between wanting you and fearing what that meant for them. You might be stuck in a loop thinking, if they were afraid of losing me, why didn't they try harder? Why didn't they push me away? But understand this, avoidance isn't logical, it's emotional. It's deeply ingrained in their psyche. They didn't sit down and rationally decide to hurt you. They didn't weigh the pros and cons of leaving someone as valuable as you. They simply reacted to their fear the way they always have, the way they likely will again in future relationships. And that's why you must stop personalizing their behavior. This was not a reflection of your worth. You could have been everything they ever wanted, kind, supportive, understanding, and they still would have run, because it was never about you. It was about the limits of their emotional capacity. But here's what they won't tell you. Deep down, they know they lost something rare. They know they had someone who truly saw them, who tried to love them despite their walls. And that's why they'll avoid facing it. That's why they won't come back with a full heart ready to change. Because facing the truth of what they lost means confronting the very fear that made them run in the first place. You felt abandoned. You felt like they walked away without a second thought, as if everything you shared meant nothing to them. But here's the reality: your avoidant ex didn't leave you, they escaped. They weren't running from you, they were running from the emotions that came with being close to you. Because for someone with an avoidant attachment style, emotional intimacy feels like a trap, even when it's healthy, even when it's built on love and respect. It's not about logic, it's about a deep-seated fear that tells them that the closer they get to someone, the more likely they are to lose themselves. In their world, connection feels suffocating. It threatens the independence they've spent years protecting. So when they start to feel too close, when they sense that someone truly sees them, their instinct isn't to lean in, it's to pull away. At first, it may have been small things. They canceled plans more often, took longer to reply, became distant in conversations. You probably felt it before it happened. That slow withdrawal, the growing space between you, the way they started acting like a different person. But instead of addressing it, they acted as if nothing was wrong. They distracted themselves, avoided difficult conversations, and in the end, they made it seem like leaving was their only option. And here's the most painful part: when they left, they probably didn't show much emotion. They didn't beg you to stay, they didn't break down, they didn't fight for what you had. And that might have made you feel like you never really mattered, but that's not true. Their lack of emotion wasn't because they didn't care, it was because feeling emotions at that depth terrifies them. They suppress, they numb, they shut down. Avoidants don't process heartbreak the way you do. They bury it. They distract themselves. They convince themselves that leaving was necessary, that they were doing the right thing, that they had no choice. But what they don't realize in the moment is that escape isn't freedom. They think they've freed themselves from emotional pressure, but what they've actually done is create a cycle of loneliness that follows them wherever they go. because you weren't the problem. The relationship wasn't the problem. The real issue is that no matter who they're with, the moment things get real, they'll feel that same fear, that same urge to run. And one day when they realize that they left behind something rare, something real, it'll be too late. Because you will have already moved forward stronger than before. Your avoidant ex may think they walked away unscathed, that they moved on without a second thought. But what they don't realize is that losing you came at a cost, one they won't fully understand until it's too late. Right now, they may feel a sense of relief, a false freedom that makes them believe they made the right choice. But time has a way of revealing the truth, and the truth is they let go of someone irreplaceable. At first, they will distract themselves. They'll keep busy, fill their time with work, hobbies, or even new relationships. But distractions don't replace what you gave them. They don't replace the way you understood them, the way you supported them, the way you made them feel safe, even when they couldn't admit they needed it. You were their anchor, whether they acknowledged it or not. And while they may have convinced themselves that leaving was the right decision, life has a way of showing them otherwise. Because eventually they will face challenges. They will go through struggles, moments of loneliness, moments of doubt. And when that happens, they will remember the way you were always there, the way you listened when no one else did, the way you forgave them even when they didn't deserve it. And the people they try to replace you with, they won't be the same. They won't have your depth, your patience, your understanding. They won't see them the way you did. They may not admit it, but deep down they will know. They will know they lost someone who truly cared, someone who gave them a chance to break free from their fears, someone who offered them love in its purest form. But avoidants are masters of suppression. Even when they feel the loss, they will push it down, pretend it doesn't exist, act like they're fine. But there will be moments, quiet moments, late at night when they're alone with their thoughts where the truth will creep in. They will wonder what you're doing, if you've moved on, if you've realized your worth. And that's when they will feel the weight of their choice. But by the time they come to terms with what they lost, you will already stepped into your power. You will have healed, grown, and evolved into a version of yourself that no longer waits for someone to see your value. Because while they lost something precious, you gained something greater. You gained the realization that you were never the one who needed to be saved. They were, and now they must face the consequences of their own fear. You've been waiting for closure, replaying the moments in your mind, searching for answers that never come. You tell yourself that if they just explained, if they just acknowledged what they did, if they just apologized, you'd be able to move on. But here's the hard truth: closure isn't something they will give you. It's something you must take for yourself. An avoidant ex doesn't process relationships the way you do. You crave understanding, a sense of resolution, a final conversation that ties up the loose ends. But that's not how they operate. Instead of facing emotions, they suppress them. Instead of having tough conversations, they avoid them. And instead of acknowledging their role in what happened, they convince themselves that leaving was for the best. Not because it was true, but because admitting otherwise would require a level of vulnerability they aren't willing to confront. So you wait. You hope that one day they'll wake up and realize the pain they caused, that they'll feel the weight of their actions and finally give you the closure you deserve. But waiting for that moment only keeps you trapped. Because even if they did come back with an explanation, would it really change anything? Would it make up for the sleepless nights, the self-doubt, the way they made you feel like you weren't enough? No words, no apology, no last conversation can erase what happened. Closure doesn't come from them. It comes from the decision you make today to stop looking for answers outside of yourself, to stop giving power to someone who already showed you that they weren't capable of giving you what you needed. They ran because that's what they do. They left because they feared what it meant to stay. And the only way you truly move on is by realizing that no explanation from them will ever be enough to undo the pain they caused. You have to give yourself what they couldn't. You have to decide that their absence is your answer, that their silence speaks louder than any words ever could, and that you don't need an apology. To heal, you need to choose yourself instead, because the moment you stop searching for closure from them, you set yourself free. Free from the pain, the confusion, the endless cycle of wondering what if. You take back your power. You stop needing someone else to validate your experience. And that is the moment you truly begin to heal. You've spent countless hours questioning yourself, analyzing every conversation, replaying every moment, wondering if you did something wrong. You ask yourself if you were too much, if you were too needy, if you should have been more patient, less emotional, more understanding. But the truth is, you were never the problem. You were never too much for the right person. You simply loved someone who wasn't capable of receiving that love in the way you gave it. Avoidant people don't leave because you weren't enough. They leave because they don't know how to handle real emotional intimacy. It's not about your worth, it's about their limitations. They crave connection just like anyone else, but the moment it becomes too real, too deep, too vulnerable, they panic. To them, closeness feels suffocating, even when it's safe. So they do what they've always done, they run. Not because you pushed them away, but because their own fears pulled them back. But here's the problem: when someone leaves without explanation, without closure, without acknowledging the pain they caused, the person left behind often internalizes the blame. You might think, if I had just done this differently, they wouldn't have left. But that's an illusion, because no matter what you did, their fear of intimacy would have found a reason to push you away. It was never about something you lacked. It was about what they were too afraid to face within themselves. You gave love. You gave understanding. You gave effort. And none of those things should ever be seen as weaknesses. You did everything you could, but you cannot make someone ready for a love they are not prepared to receive. Their inability to stay doesn't mean you were unworthy. It simply means they weren't capable. And no amount of self-sacrifice on your part could have changed that. One day they will look back and realize what they had. They will remember your kindness, your patience, your presence. But by then, you will have already stepped into your power. You will no longer be waiting for them to validate your worth, because you will have realized that your worth was never in question. You are not hard to love. You are not too much. You are exactly who you were meant to be. And the person who is truly meant for you will never make you feel like you have to shrink yourself just to be enough. Something inside you has shifted. You no longer crave their validation. You no longer sit in silence waiting for a message that may never come. The person who once had the power to shake your confidence, to make you question your worth, to keep you trapped in a cycle of self-doubt, they don't hold that power anymore. Because now you realize that the real loss wasn't yours. It was theirs. For too long you lived in their world, playing by their unspoken rules. You accepted the emotional distance, the inconsistency, the way they gave just enough to keep you hopeful, but never enough to make you feel secure. You excused their inability to open up, convinced yourself that if you just loved them harder, if you just proved your worth, they would finally let their guard down. But love isn't supposed to feel like a test, and you're done trying to prove yourself to someone who couldn't even see what was right in front of them. Now you stand taller, stronger, wiser. You no longer search for closure from someone who was never emotionally available in the first place. You don't analyze their behavior hoping to decode a hidden message that says they secretly miss you. You don't wait for them to change, because deep down you know they won't not for you, not for anyone. And even if they did, it wouldn't be enough, because you are no longer the person who would settle for breadcrumbs when you deserve the whole damn feast. You are no longer chasing. You are attracting. The energy you used to pour into them, the effort, the patience, the love, you are now pouring into yourself. And that is your new power. You no longer seek external validation because you have found it within. You no longer allow someone else's inability to love you properly define how you see yourself. You have risen from the ashes of heartbreak, not as a victim, but as a warrior. One day they will look back and realize what they lost. They will remember your kindness, your depth, your unwavering support. They will wish they had done things differently. But by then it will no longer matter, because you have stepped into a new version of yourself, one that refuses to settle, one that refuses to wait, one that refuses to dim its light for anyone. And that is why your avoidant ex has truly lost you. Not just physically, but energetically, emotionally, and completely. They lost you the moment you realized you never needed them to begin with. And now you stand in your power, no longer waiting, no longer questioning, no longer longing for something that was never meant for you. You've walked through the fire, and instead of letting it consume you, you let it refine you. You have turned heartbreak into strength, self-doubt into self-worth, and loss into liberation. The version of you that once begged for clarity, that once settled for less, that once believed love required suffering, that version is gone. In its place stands someone who knows their value, someone who refuses to shrink, someone who understands that real love doesn't require chasing, convincing, or waiting. And the greatest victory, you no longer need them to see what they lost because you have already found everything you needed within yourself. You are free. You are whole. And your future is brighter than ever. Because the moment you stopped looking back was the moment you truly moved forward.